Good evening, all, and welcome to Kal-bardr's Corner for this episode of This Just In, a show that we shouldn't need, but for now, here we are. We're focusing on transparency and what is happening around the known world. I am Baron Kal, Gellir, and for this show, I have two guests who are ready to do a deep dive into a topic. Please welcome the Honorable Lady Jerusha and the Honorable Noble Elinor, better known as Joe and Ducky. Evening, folks.
What's up?
Hello.
Oh, are we ready to do this tonight? Are we good? Are we settled and ready?
All right, let's do this. So, our goal today is to take what happened at the SCA BOD meeting that happened this past Sunday, go through the meeting in a chronological order, and then just kind of discuss some salient points. These are our myself and Ducky's observations. Kal is here to keep us, from raging against the machine too much.
And also to keep us on task, too, because we could ramble.
We have a lot to cover.
Essentially, I'm the referee tonight. That's what
basically. But do you have that disclaimer, bro? Because we're going to need that.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and do this. The views and opinions expressed here are those of the participants and not reflect any official policy or position of SCA Incorporated or any groups we are a part of. And
also, you might want to put
there will be some offensive language.
Yes, because we're dropping F-bombs and because
frustration. Because frustration.
We're frustrated. We are frustrated people. So let's begin.
The goal for this show is news and is talking about what happened. However, there are a lot of opinions we have about what's happened, and we're going to try to keep it to what's there, but we're going to have some rages as well. So just be ready for that.
And that's what Kal's doing here. He's the moderator of this show. So let's go ahead and get this started. So the first part, we want to just kind of go with our overall impression. The overall note that we both saw is a note of unpreparedness. They didn't seem to be prepared. A couple of things that kind of made us, kind of think this is the fact that the meeting didn't actually start broadcasting until 10:15, even though it was scheduled to start at 10 a.m. Now, I can hear the crowd saying, well, that's just SCA time. Yeah, but, if you're going to do a professional, like, BOD meeting there or a modern meeting, kind of time.
The concept of SCA time pisses me off in general. That's a whole separate rant.
Cosmo. Sorry, my dog's being a butt.
Okay.
But yeah, so that was kind of, so already we're kind of starting off on a bad foot. I mean, there was commentary because I did a lot. Not only did I do a kind of a live blogging stream on my Virtual Herald page, I also actually hosted a Discord viewing party because you do have to pre-register to get a link to the Zoom webinar. And so I made my link available, and we actually had several people stop by, but there was a lot of kind of confusion going, well, where's the meeting? It's 10 o'clock. Why are people here? So that was kind of like, that kind of just set the tone, I think. So, but I'm going to go ahead and but we're going to talk about what happened after that. So they call the meeting to order. Everybody introduces themselves, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. And then we come to the first frustration, what I'd like to call the statement.
The community standard statement, I think, is how I want to title it, because they kept using that phrase.
Right.
Right. So Director Rogner read a statement basically saying that, clarifying that Wistrick's secondary sanction was not because of the whole Baldr incident. It was because of an additional incident that violated community standards. Now, everybody here who has ever been in Facebook land knows exactly what community standards are in terms of Facebook, right? That was the first time I had ever heard the term community standards being used in an SCA context. Ducky, go ahead.
They're using these buzzwords and they're applying them to our community where they don't show up anywhere in our corpora. They're talking about these concepts that for us don't, I'm not saying they don't exist, but the code of conduct for the SCA and the way we're supposed to purport ourselves are split between a number of different handbooks and websites or parts of the website. There's no one codified thing that says this is the community standards, this is what we expect you to adhere to. And to start quoting in these things and using these buzzwords when you don't have the knowledge or the concepts to back it up, gives this general feeling of unpreparedness. And they know the terms that they should be using if they're trying to do this professionally,
Right.
They should be sticking to.
Let me ask this. So the community standards they quoted, or sort of the thing they quoted, was it something that was on Facebook or YouTube or something like that? Because
no,
okay, because that's if they were quoting he did X on Facebook.
No, they said SCA community standards.
Yeah, they said SCA community standards 1. Okay. So that's
which is a thing that does not exist currently.
And they actually backpedaled that towards the end of the meeting when they were doing the Q&A, when Bear Killer comes out and says, well, actually, we don't really have community standards. We have the community standards are all so anyway. But the big thing the problem I had is that it was specifically said in the question and answer session that statement would be published following the meeting.
The statement about what Wistrick did,
no, the statement that Director Rogner started off the meeting with that cited community standards.
Yeah. They were according to Bridget Costello, or in the Q&A, someone asked the question. So is this message going to be made available after the meeting for people to read? At the time they were told yes, this will be made available after the BOD meeting.
It's like a week later. We haven't seen it.
It's almost a week later. The statement still has not been published.
They've chosen to.
What has been published is a totally other story that we're not even going to get into in this podcast, because otherwise we'll be here all fucking night.
Right.
Right.
But
okay, so in this statement, so he talked about community standards, which don't exist. He talked about Wistrick doing something else that we don't know about, that Wistrick doesn't know about for his other sanction. Was anything else covered during that?
Yeah, the second part of that statement, which upon first hearing it really pissed me off, was basically an admonishment and a warning to anyone who is currently involved in an investigation of conduct to not talk about what is going on in their investigation.
Right.
And
the implication being that you would be punished for sharing your knowledge of the situation.
Yeah. And when I first heard that, I'm like, I actually wrote on the Q&A, and this was one of the few questions of my that I posed that were answered. And I'm like, are you guys saying that anyone who speaks about any type of investigation is subject to sanction? Paraphrase. And they actually responded during the Q&A. Director Rogner did, saying, "Oh no, we're just talking about the corporate officers and the investigators." No. If you're people who are subject to investigation or they can say whatever they want. I'm like, Yeah, keep backpedaling.
Yeah.
Like,
Which okay, and I can see where I'm going to play the benefit of the doubt, but I can see where that would be misworded or could be misheard, of where they were trying to apply it to the official officers and body members and investigators, because that's generally what the sanctions handbook and investigator handbook I've seen says is, if you're doing that thing, everything within that thing, the investigation in this case, is classified and only bot access.
And
Whether we agree with that or
he
not,
did
that's what
clarify
our
that,
rules
but it did not come across that way. And we were still reeling about the whole community standards thing.
Right.
And to be honest, if you're on the board of directors, you should be clearly communicating all of these things to your populace. It shouldn't be,
especially if this was a prepared statement. This was not just him talking off the cuff.
According to him, it was a prepared statement. So that means it should have gone through Bridget Costello and had a communications director go over it for intentionality and to make sure, and for clarity, to make sure that nothing could be misunderstood and nothing, to make sure it's bulletproof, and it doesn't seem like they're doing that.
Yeah.
I know we're all volunteers.
Overall, that whole first part, sloppy. I can see that. So,
let's move through. So past that, we had some dissolutions, I think. So we're going to gloss over a lot of the business stuff.
So we go through some stuff and things. The next part of the meeting that we wanted to kind of call out was the section about dissolutions. There were 3 branches of the SCA that were approved for dissolution, or one of them was in Eastern Massachusetts, and that one was due to overlap, which can happen, as people move around and areas get bigger and whatnot. If there is too much of an administrative structure, get rid of the duplication. Right. Totally get that. That was the one in the East Kingdom.
The canton of Ashlehurst.
Yeah, Ashlehurst. So totes get that. That's fine. The 2 that we really want to talk about are the Shire of Avonwood, and the Shire of, oh God, what's
Turum and DC.
Yeah. Say that 3 times fast. That.
Mundanely, it's Marshall, Minnesota, and Sheboygan County, Wisconsin.
Yep. Which and it was discussed during the meeting and pointed out by the SOSEN that these 2 shires were basically being dissolved due to lack of interest, due to them being way out in the rural parts of the state, that they didn't really have they didn't mention the specifics, which I don't expect them to, but I think that the fact that this is happening needs to be looked into a little bit more, and seeing how the society as a corporate entity or can help regional areas, regional kingdoms, help support those smaller groups. I myself live, prior to moving to Las Vegas, I lived in a little town called Salina, Ohio. And I was actually created a shire out there that is about to go, I believe it's still incipient, but it's about to go live, I guess, or full status. And I know about that. It's tough.
Right.
You think it's tough getting people involved in like a large metropolitan area? Try rural Ohio or rural Wisconsin or rural Minnesota. And so we want it.
We're a multinational, multi-million-dollar nonprofit. We could be doing more to support these rural communities and give them the resources they need. But the other big thing that we need to be looking at too is that in some areas, people could be shutting down and not wanting to volunteer because of DEI issues, because of systemic issues in the local area. So we need to be tracking these things and addressing some issues that could pop up, because sometimes it's patterns of abuse.
Right.
Example.
There's baronies in Caid that have places that will not participate because previous baronage were making it a hostile work environment. We're harassing people on multiple levels, and they're at the point where they feel like they need to dissolve or at least go back to a shire from their barony status, because they can't have that level of participation because the water in the well is poisoned now.
Right.
So
I think that whole concept, and realistically, speaking as a project manager, that's a whole project even to document and figure out how to track that. Right. Because the data is there. We know it's there because it's in all of these minutes from the last.
The data is there, yeah.
But I think the tracking of that data over time would be an effort, because we're a volunteer organization, I can see why that hasn't been done yet, because it's a low priority on top of the other problems we currently have. Yes, it's probably valuable, and yes, there's somebody. It's like I can see that there's care there. I don't see that being a huge win right now.
No, but it is like a long-term goal that if we're going to be an organization that is tried to be professional and modern in the modern world with a intent to minimize harm and boost our populace, then that's something that we need to be doing long-term.
Right. Agreed.
If we're going to be an organization that moves with intentionality and be the honor-based system that we say that we are, we need to be doing everything we can to support our people.
Agreed.
And I think that should be a higher priority than some other things that they really consider to be. But again, my opinion. All right, so let's talk about the next the next part of the meeting we wanted to call out. Then after that section, they went over what is quote unquote old business. Mm-hmm. The first part of this was variances that had already been granted by the Society Seneschal, asking the board to retroactively approve those. There were two of them that were discussed that we want to talk about. The first one was a variance with regards to a kingdom that require, and we weren't able to we don't remember the name of the kingdom. We couldn't hear it according to
the transcription was difficult because they only had the closed captioning. The interpreter was not able to attend last minute, and they couldn't schedule another one.
And some of our kingdoms are hard for most captioning systems to pick up anyways.
Yeah.
Right.
So in this kingdom, the law, and if someone knows what this kingdom is, please load it in the comments. This particular kingdom has a law that requires the kingdom seneschal to be physically present at Crown Tournament. And they were seeking a variance to be allowed to attend. Be allowed to be excused and have their deputy attend instead because they had a modern issue come up. And the variance was granted for their May Crown Tournament, and there was not a lot of discussion on that. But the reason I wanted to call that out is because this is where interkingdom anthropology kind of rears its ugly head. This particular kingdom has this law. I can tell you in Kaid, we don't have that law.
Right.
Like, I don't know about the Middle Kingdom either, or because the Middle Kingdom is where I lived, and I certainly don't remember that being the law in Atenveld either. So I think that this kind of points out to a little bit of a, disconnect. And my opinion is that while, kingdoms have cultural traditions that vary from area to area and region to region. I don't know if it was on tier or not. Wendy. I think that there's culture and then there's muddying the waters. And I think something that needs to be looked at and considered is how can we kind of standardize some of these particular practices? Like, for example, I can understand in 1980 or even 1990, early aughts, having the Kingdom Seneschal show up, be there for a Crown Tournament to witness it and all of that stuff. But considering that just about every single Crown Tournament is now being either live streamed or live blogged or whatnot, I could see this could be a particularly onerous requirement, especially if it's a larger kingdom, like for example Artemisia, that expands, way the 5 biggest states, the whole of the upper.
Well, and on Steel is all of Texas. That's huge too.
Yeah, that's a huge.
That's for days and still be in Texas.
Yeah. So and that's a whole.
But the bigger thing is the discussion that they had about these variances. They were talking about how they are suggesting that these kingdoms change their kingdom laws and not request variances as often.
Which I can agree with that as a concept, because if you're having to request a variance every year, just change the law. We can do that.
Right, but they're not giving them. guidance on ways to do that. They're having side conversations in the middle of the BOD meeting instead of going to the Kingdom Seneschals and saying, hey, you should call your law council and reevaluate this, and here's how we can help you. Because again, we are a multinational, multi-million-dollar nonprofit. We should be able to empower our Kingdom Seneschals to help them tackle these things, and just instead of just making snarky side discussion in a BOD meeting.
Right. And then the second one, the second variance, which was not granted, was apparently in Atlantia. The Atlantean law prohibits baronage from holding a coronet or a kingdom office, and apparently that's in their kingdom law. And apparently a local baroness is currently asked permission to be also minister of the lists, which is a kingdom level office.
Apparently a greater office in Atlantia?
Yeah, in Atlantia. So they denied the variance because the board didn't see any evidence, or said that there was not enough evidence that all channels were exhausted in attempting to find a list officer that wasn't already a landed baroness.
Right.
And so
the reality is they just didn't publish it in their newsletter. Yeah. That was the one thing they missed.
And
but in their defense, they're holding them to their own rules. They're asking for variance to their rules, and they didn't follow their own rules in the first place.
Neither does the BOD, though.
Yeah, that's why we're calling this out.
The hypocrisy is the thing that we're trying to highlight here, because these are people who will not adhere to the actual rules of our game, and are demanding that other people with less experience and maybe less experience, I'm not sure, but they are demanding that other people do the same.
Right.
They say you have to adhere to the rules, but I don't have to because I'm John the Bear Killer.
Okay, so I agree with that, and I think the concept we have to look at is it's not the do as you're told, not or do as you're told, not as we do idea, that which is what we're seeing right now.
Mm-hmm.
I like to look at the other side of the idea of governing from the bottom up. Is we should be setting an example of what they should be doing. Right, that's what we can do locally, even if it's on a kingdom level. Right. There's not a reason in this case we shouldn't either change these laws if they're not working for what we're doing locally, regionally, whatever, or make sure we're following the laws. If we're not following our own laws because we can't for some reason, the seneschal not attending the crown tourney, let's adjust it then. Let's make those adjustments. We can do that locally. We don't need the BOD's permission for that. And that may be something we want to look at is we can fix some of these problems at a kingdom level.
Yeah.
Right. The BOD is a separate problem from that, in my opinion. Because yes, you're right. They are hypocrites.
Yeah.
It is and it isn't, because if they're the ones technically in charge of our game, we can't move without them approving things at the end of the day. Like we could change these kingdom laws and they could then change corpora, and then we'd have to change it back.
Right.
So for instance, some of those are the kingdom that has to have the kingdom seneschal there. That's a kingdom level law. That has nothing to do with the BOD. So they could change that ad nauseum on their side, and the BOD doesn't care because that doesn't override corpora if they change that one piece of that. I'm guessing the same thing with Atlantia prohibiting landed baronages. That's a local kingdom law that the BOD has nothing to do with. Because I know Meridian doesn't have that law. So I'm guessing that's a kingdom specific.
Well, there is corpora parts that say baronage can't be exchequer or seneschal at any point.
Sure.
That is Section 5, Part B, subsection 4, I think.
The two major offices, yeah.
Yeah, you can't be the two business side offices, but that's it, as far as I know.
So then that law in Atlantia is an addition to that, then that they could change if they wanted to change it.
And to be fair, and to be fair to the point, yes, local and kingdom law can be more stringent than corpora. It can't be less stringent, and it can't, and it technically shouldn't, be against modern law.
Correct.
I think the salient point is just we need the BOD to empower these kingdoms to do that without it feeling like they're going to get the rug out from underneath them.
Agreed.
Right, because I'm sure after this meeting, there's probably some scrambling going on in Atlantia right now. So
and There should be more uniformity at the regional level when you're talking about the administrative side of the game. There shouldn't be this much inter-kingdom anthropology when you're talking about the legal business side of the game, like the officer warrants and the...
Yeah, okay, but in this case, you're talking about the minister of a list, which has nothing to do with the business.
Right.
And that I have a personal problem with our business and our game being mixed too much, personally.
Yeah.
I was talking about the seneschal portion, like specifically on the business side of it, but you're right, completely about the lists.
So I think the seneschal, exchequer, minister of children, or like legal ones. What other legal ones are there that are like
chronicler too, because we need them for the lists. Like, so the chronicler, like social media part, we actually need them to publish things for insurance. For insurance.
Chronicler.
Okay, sure.
We'll lose our insurance if we don't publish.
Sure. Okay, I can give you that. But like that's also not. But it falls to the seneschal. If we don't have a chronicler, it falls to the seneschal to do those things. So like realistically, a group can function with the two officers. You have to have a seneschal, have to have an exchequer. The rest of it's extra.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking things like the herald or anything under the herald's office, the marshal, anything under the marshal's office. Even though the marshal has some legal things, it's still game side legal, right? I think that's where we maybe need to make some changes. Again, looking locally, is because we're requiring those things at a kingdom level. The BOD doesn't care about them because they're not legal things. They have made their minister of lists more important and therefore have more laws, right? Yeah. So like in Meridies, our only officer is the Beacon Herald, which is our singular principal herald. Everything beneath them is deputies to that office that they can do with as they wish. So if they don't want a minister of list this for their reign, they don't have to have one.
And in Kaid, it's an officer under the marshal's office, right, because it has to do with martial combat. So like in Kaid, for example, in Kaid, I report to Sir Davin, who is a Kingdom Earl Marshal, because I am a baronial list marshal.
And my understanding is that in the mid-realm, the lists office is the same. I don't even think that there's actually a position in that kingdom that is called list officer. I think it's just handled on an ad hoc basis. And anybody from the mid-realm who's listening, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a minute since I've been there. But I never really saw a list officer in the mid-realm.
Also has a weird herald warranting process that other kingdoms don't have too.
Yeah, I do.
That's a whole thing. Yeah,
that's a whole other banana hammock. So
I can agree with some uniformity at a regional level. In this case, regional being kingdom levels, could be useful for the administrative side of the game. Talking seneschal, exchequer, like the legal things we have to have. I agree. I think that's useful. The game side stuff, that's one of the things I think leaving it, whereas some regional uniformity could help. You've got so many variations on that; it's harder to do. I think that's where that's where I think the BOD shouldn't get involved. I think that's the crux of that.
I get that, but again, I just wanted these are just our observations as we, and keep in mind we're already not in a good headspace because the meeting's 15 minutes late. We just got this god awful statement, and that's
why I'm trying to devil's advocate a little bit on some of this.
And you are right, but like I said, with regards to the seneschal variants, that one, we should have uniformity there. You're completely right about the list officer. There shouldn't be total regional uniformity across things, because every kingdom will have different needs because they are different regions.
Yep.
But there should be nothing that says that there shouldn't be uniformity for the things that legally matter.
Yep, agreed. I completely agree with that.
That is the salient point.
Yeah, let me address some of your comments
here. Answer Krista Gardner's Gordon comment.
Yes.
Yeah, that is correct. The seneschal, the SOSEN did grant the variance. The BOD overturned it.
Yeah, which and that's our process currently.
And that's our process. We just wanted to point that out because it was just one of those things. It's like, okay, whatever.
And Shane, to answer your question, yes, there was a new statement read at the start of the meeting. You played this episode back later, or it should be released by the BOD at some point.
Yeah,
that was a giant
one where they said community statements
or community standards.
All right, so let's move on.
What's next?
Next item was it was proposed back in February that the society could rent into a relationship with JSTOR and A-Store. For those of you not in the audience, JSTOR and ASTOR are a repository of academic articles. Ducky knows more about this.
JSTOR and ASTOR are research materials, research databases that mostly universities provide to their students to do accurate research on projects that they're trying to learn about. So it primarily focuses on stuff that's in museums and archives and whatnot. So it would be very beneficial for us in terms of historical research. And then ASTOR also has all of the images, so like historical paintings, woodcuts, things like that. Their BOD is looking into doing research to obtain this, depending on the cost to the society for JSTOR and ASTOR to be put in with your membership. They haven't really moved on it, but the other thing is this like be what the first actual benefit outside of not paying NMR?
Yeah,
and they're dragging their feet on it.
Yeah, because this was the first proposed, according in my remembrance, this was first broached back on the February 27th conference call or whatever the frack.
Yes,
and here we are, April, and I guess
not any new information.
And with no new information, they just wanted to announce, hey, we're looking into this, coming soon. And I was like, okay, that's nice.
Which I appreciate them doing due diligence on it, right? I appreciate them making an effort to find some benefit to membership, because that's been one of the complaints that we've had is, what are we spending this money for, especially when we're getting less now than we did even 2 years ago.
And the insurance is going up.
And the insurance is going up on some things. So like I'm going to give them an A for effort on at least they're trying to do something. Somebody's trying to do something to give us some benefit.
Which is why we included it in our notes, because we were like, this might be the first, like I said, this might be the first actual benefit outside of not paying NMR.
Yeah, and I think that it's something that really would be useful. It also
especially
kind
with
of
the research standards that people are asking for.
It kind of gives us a more of a backing for our stated mission of being a historical recreation group as opposed to a social club, which it can be both. I'm not saying it can't be. It's just it adds that nuance and that additional layer of usefulness to being involved in the society. And here's my co-host, Carrot.
Hi, Carrot.
And I just raised the question, like they could be doing more like other things like this. There are plenty of other databases that universities use that are very similar, or museums and whatnot. Like they could be working with these people more, not just now. I'm glad that they're trying. I'm super glad that they're trying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this is one of those. They're making some effort, which is great. They're also fighting a whole bunch of fights. I'm not. Spoiler alert! I did just get an email or a message from a friend of mine with some different tea about a court case that just popped up against the SCA. So they have their hands full with some things right now. So I appreciate they're making some effort.
They do. I mean, they were leaking our data for the last 3 years.
They were leaking their data for the last 3 years.
That's a whole other episode.
Coming up next on Kal-bardr Corner.
I'm thinking we should probably just make this a weekly thing.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. But anyway,
I know, right?
The next thing we wanted to talk about was the fact that this peerage committee, which has been going on for about 15 years now.
Yep. Yeah, well, I think the peerage committee is going to be a thing that will always exist
to look at
what peerage is.
They did not have anything to report.
Yeah.
WTF.
After 15 years.
Why has there not been any movement? There has been, countless commentary from the BOD, yada yada, blah blah blah. This to me is a prime example of the kicking the can method of administration that seems to be a favored tactic by corporate and the board of directors. If they're not really interested or they don't want to deal with it, they just say, oh, well, we kick it down the road.
So when the peerage committee was started, so the mod has came out of the peerage committee since it started.
Mm-hmm.
They've done something in 15 years, right? And they've done a couple of pollings in different, like, what's the word for...
The census peerage was
census records
was the next.
Yeah, but a lot of people have a lot of mixed feelings about that. But
what I'm saying is that if you guys are no longer going to be considering any other peerages, then just say so.
Right.
come out one way or the other.
Yeah,
Right.
shit or get off the pot, will you? I mean, you're hanging this carrot over all of us. If the board of directors is made the decision already that that the mod is it, we're not doing peerages for anything else.
Kelly, the peerage committee is the committee that explores new peerages. The only, like we said, the only one that's come out of it in the last 15 years is the mod. They have explored omnibus peerages and other peerages to add to the 4 that we already have.
Yeah, the biggest one, I know that the biggest one that people are really kind of clamoring for and advocating is one for archery, because the archery community is, especially here in Vegas,
but all over the society is huge.
All over the society, and archers are they feel like they're not able to achieve a terminal award in their specific martial art.
Correct.
So that's just an example.
Right, like Alessandra is bringing up.
Yeah,
it's exhausting. It's no longer seems genuine.
Yeah. Just a stalling tactic.
I would be really curious to see what the actual. None of us are on this committee, so we don't know what they're getting. We don't know what data is there. I'd be curious to see the data they're getting and how that's actually being used on their side. Because if it's junk data, if they're not getting good data for whatever reason, if they're getting mixed signals from that data, I would guess that's why they're not moving forward with something, right? Because if you're getting half and half,
they could just release the data to the paid members.
Correct, and I think that's some visibility there of
the transparency issues that we keep going back to.
Yep.
They could just, the same way they release the SCA census data, they could release this peerage committee data more often and more frequently, and they're not doing that either.
Correct.
To even get the census data in particular, outside of like the broad analysis, you have to be a kingdom seneschal.
Right.
And we could be using that on all the way down. Like you could, as a territorial, could request it. And
we can't even get zip code lists if you're not a seneschal of what zip codes their groups are.
Right.
We've tried. Trust me. I can see it, and that's a whole problem and they use excuses for that. Anyway.
Yeah, there's no excuse for that.
Yeah.
A zip code is not PII.
Correct.
Come on. It's a zip code.
So,
in fact,
new business.
All right, so let's move on. So the new business.
We're at 37 minutes. I'm going to keep us rolling here.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah.
So the next part of the meeting that we want to discuss is the new business part. A couple of items there that we wanted to call out. There was action item about sanction policies and procedures. A revision of their manual, which, as far as I can tell, they don't. I mean, I don't. It's the sanctions are the sanctions manual is already processed, and the is pretty much unclear already.
Right.
So, WTF?
So only asking to revise one item doesn't make sense when the whole thing needs work.
Yeah, and then I only have one other thing to say: community standards.
Okay, so what were they talking about revising? Do we have a note about what
they didn't say that? They were said
no, they didn't. They just said that they were trying to revise one item, and they asked the board to send it back so that it can be worked on it more. And then they noticed that other items need further work, but they didn't specify that either. The whole thing needs to be rewritten because it's already very vague, and people don't know. There's already too much interkingdom anthropology happening with it, like where there's things that are going on in one kingdom that when you're going through the sanctions and the investigative process, they get applied and not in others because nobody fully understands what they're doing because it's already such a vague guide.
Well, so even with a vague guide, having no training, having no process, you're right. I think there's lots of problems with that.
To say that there's only one part that really needs to be fixed or revised and not even comment on what that is when this is a thing that really deeply affects us.
Yeah.
Since you could clearly be sanctioned for just about anything.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see when their report comes out if they note what part was being addressed in that, because again, I'm looking at this is a business meeting. I've been in business meetings. It was something they were probably looking at on a sheet of paper that they went, oh yeah, that thing is something we talked about. We're going to send this back to committee to be worked on. So they knew what it was, but forgot to read it to the public. Right. Again, giving them some benefit of the doubt of not being good at hosting meetings. We discussed that at the beginning of this. So I'll be curious if they note that or not. If they don't, then something we should pursue is, okay, what thing are you addressing? Because we want to see it.
Yeah.
All right. So the next item is the 2022 annual report draft. Apparently, Bridget Costello, the communication officer, was asking for approval to begin an annual report starting for 2022 that would be distributed by all standard channels.
Right.
Very basic report, but the report would contain more information about it. Basically, this is the beginning of their efforts to be more transparent.
Right.
And on this one, we want to say good job, because
Yeah.
this is actually a very good step.
Yeah, this is a very good step in the right direction. The only thing that I would hope is clarified, and they did clarify it in the Q&A section about what standard channels are, and that's going to be very important, because right now trust in the corporate and in the board of directors is at an all-time low. Not that it was ever high to begin with,
right?
But really, it's stinky and full of danger.
So in that case, they're referencing standard channels listed in the Society Communications Guide.
Yeah, basically they're saying
that is actually a thing that I will tell you that I've seen it. It's there. They have what they consider their standard official spots they put stuff.
Yeah, so which is basically the website, and then they share it onto the Facebook page, because Facebook is now.
It is 90% of 90% of our populace, or at least 90% that answered the 2020 census, did say that social media, and particularly Facebook, is how they get a lot of their information about events, either the Facebook or their Kingdom website.
Yep. So at least that, yeah. So kudos to the board for that. And anybody who doesn't, regardless of what you think of the BOD, Bridget's doing a really great job. Some stuff she's doing in the background.
She's doing a good job. And
it does seem like she's trying very hard, but she's not being given a lot to work with.
Correct.
I think.
And her and I had some discussion.
I tip my hat to her, and I'll buy her like all the Australian drinks that she can handle.
Send her a Tim Tam. She loves the Tim Tam.
Okay, so because I will say this, I do have a lot of respect and a lot of appreciation for her job, and the fact that we're finally getting a more polished and professional look in that direction. Yep. That's heartening.
Yeah. Something they've really done the last few years is polish these communications efforts. Mm-hmm. They're getting shit inputs from the board and things.
Exactly.
So
that's
the way they do it is correct.
I mean, when the whole
Bridget does have this background of doing this professionally. Like she works in public policy in Australia and New Zealand. In Lockhart, somewhere in Lockhart. I know that she does work in public policy. So she does have this background, and that's what we want. If we're going to get volunteers, we should be moving towards
we should actually
people with actual qualifications
that have actual real world experience in the area they're wanting to volunteer with. The reason I'm the exchequer for the barony, that and Baroness was stepping up. The exchequer was stepping up as Baroness. I work in payroll, so I have accounting adjacent experience.
Right.
So that's and cultivating that. So great job on that. I'm looking forward to seeing what is published and what is and what how that progresses. So moving on to the next. So the next section of the board meeting is the reports. The reports for all of the various society and corporate officers. We're going to go ahead and kind of the overall tone of that was kind of like a baronial populace meeting or a baronial business meeting or council meeting where everybody goes down the line and does a report. Some of the things that I would suggest to kind of make it a little bit more palatable is publish those reports before the meeting.
Right.
If they're publishable reports, there shouldn't be any reason you can't put them out ahead of time.
Yeah, and so that way people can read them ahead of the meeting and know, okay, so that way they can, the people that are reporting only have to go can just do the bullet points
synopsis
and not have to sit there and read from a piece of paper. And it's mindful of it also is mindful of the volunteers' time, because they have to wait in line while some reports are short, others are long.
This meeting was 4 hours,
Right.
and we already have like a history of not treating our volunteers well from the top down. And there's no reason that these people couldn't be more mindful of their time if they are going to volunteer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's better things they could be doing than reading reports. You're right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's one of the things that I would definitely suggest that the board consider, because because that would make things a little bit easier. So let's go to the president's report, which was, again,
not a particularly whole lot.
Not a whole heck of a lot. A lot of commendations, a lot of, everything's hunky-dory, which brings us to kind of what we were wanting. Why are we paying this man $43K?
To pat people on the back.
Uh-huh.
Well, and I think to answer that question, there is, in this case, what you're seeing in that public report is not all he does, right?
True.
Having got 100 emails from this man in the last year about some problems I've caused, he does other things. Drives a golf cart fairly well at Golf Wars. I know that much. But you're right. I think I would expect more out of the report than just commendations. I appreciate he's doing commendations. I appreciate he's giving kudos to people where they're deserved. That's good. Is his job really worth that money? I think that's a discussion. You're right.
Yeah,
I think that's a discussion. I'm not saying that as the president of the society, he does deserve some compensation.
Mm-hmm.
But the hours quoted that he works, at least from the IRS forms that they submitted, it's like, I think they said something like 10 to 13 hours a week tops.
Right.
I don't know if that's accurately what he does, but if it is, that's something like $200 an hour.
Right.
I think, if my math is correct. And so why are we paying him that much for this little amount of work unless he's doing more? And then he needs to be talking about that.
Right.
Because what's on paper is 10 to 13 hours a week.
And I think I'm not a business professional, not an accountant. Okay. Goodness, he's so excited today.
Right.
So
that's why I have cats.
Right. My cat never barks. I don't know what the details of why he's listing 10 hours versus 100 hours. I don't know. I think there could be some things of, well, if he's paid for 20 hours, he's considered a part-time employee, and then has health benefits or something. I don't know. Yeah, there may
is
be
no health benefits. The SCA is not payroll hat on.
I know. I'm just saying there may be some, like, if you hit a threshold, he qualifies for some things, and they're trying to keep him under that, but still pay him things. That's sort of the guess, right? Yeah,
that's a guess. It shouldn't be a guess. It should be clearly and transparently disclosed, because that's part of fiscal responsibility. Yep. What exactly are you doing that justifies what we're paying?
Right. Especially when your wife's out there vague booking.
Yeah.
But, that's a whole separate side conversation.
That's a whole separate issue. So we're going to move on.
Yep.
The IT report was read out. They briefly touched upon the security breach that was...
they way undersold it, though.
Oh, yeah. Especially with the blog entry from Man. The guy who actually found the breach first and had to basically say, hey guys,
it was 6 different mailing lists.
Hey you guys, if you don't say something, I'm going to say something. So that blog post, which if you can find it, Cal, you can find a link and post it on there. He basically offers the timeline from when he discovered it till the time the SCA finally said,
right.
That's right. John, you make a good point. He wasn't the first one to find it, and he does note that in his blog entry
because it was copied. It was copied a number of times.
Actually listened to, because he basically had to say, "Look, if you're not going to say anything, I will."
Right.
So, and they found this breach was first discovered in January of,
and we didn't know. It wasn't announced till
it wasn't announced until April, about a couple of weeks before the board meeting. So, which brings me to another point with regard.
You're gonna harp on confidentiality.
Yeah. So
and
the
keeping
board seems
IT
to have this
standards.
hard on for the word confidentiality. They say that a lot, but they're not. But yet they let 3 years worth of private communications be exposed on the internet.
And we don't know exactly. They have not talked about what they're going to do to notify all these people. If anybody's been notified, a couple of people have been. Like I know that Baron Cormac was notified, but how many other people may or may not have been notified when their information could be out there?
Mm-hmm. Because
it was copied a number of times. We don't know where else it is.
Right.
So that, and which brings me to the Brian Demore sanction, which he just published something that I literally saw on my Facebook feed. He just published something about, finally the board responded to his question of, why did I get sanctioned, bro? This man is a top cybersecurity expert in the modern world, and he was sanctioned for
a colloquial term,
saying the word hacking.
Yeah, well, yeah, he called what he fixed a hack because he hacked the thing together.
In programming terms, it's a colloquial term that is often used for making functional code that is not pretty.
Yep.
So
if he can get sanctioned for vague booking, why can't other people?
Especially when what he did actually wasn't,
wasn't really vague.
And he didn't even implement it either. Like he realized that it wasn't going to function how he wanted it to, and he did not even implement it. But he got in trouble for a colloquial term that a board that seems to not understand technology didn't understand.
Sure. Speaking of, so I posted links to both the write-up, a really, 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 really well done write-up about that whole that breach.
Yeah, down to the minute, man. Yes. That is an IT. I want to meet this man and buy him.
I am going to be messaging him after this show and trying to schedule a show about this to cover this whole thing because damn, that's a good write-up. And then also that's Brian's GitHub post about his side of his thing.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we're kind of like, okay. So the next thing we want to talk about is the social media report, which again, social media communications, again, Bridget is doing a whole lot of things here to bring the SCA back, forward into this century. She mentioned a lot of things about, her podcast. They're wanting to create the first SCA branded podcast. I'm like, all right, that's great. You're kind of late to the party, but okay.
I was like, nobody's doing that yet. It's fine.
Nobody's doing that at all.
Honestly, it's like if they're gonna start doing this, they should start working with the established outlets. Their populace has already started doing this.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'm gonna rant for a second here.
Ooh, here we go.
I worked with Bridget about this 2 years ago when her and me and Jessica we got together to discuss this, and they're like, we don't know if we could do this or not because legal things and whatever. So they have the options. They know where their tools are. They've been given free access to tools. FYI. Sorry. Okay, I'm done now.
So there's some tea there.
Yeah, a little bit. So, that's a hot button for me. So yeah.
Yeah. So and then
there's that worry though that it without allowing criticism, because the BOD historically doesn't take criticism well, it could just become state media.
Yeah, in essence, it's like, look at us, all bright cherries. Not that we're saying that at the end of the day, this podcast, this SCA branded podcast that they're thinking, it's a marketing tool. We get it, we understand, but the problem that I see in the horizon, because of the way that this board of directors handles any sort of criticism or anything that approaches, maybe you guys aren't doing a good job and takes it personally, that
yeah, and that's what they gotta understand. If they're gonna branch into that, which cool, hey, I applaud them. However they want to do it, you're gonna get trolls. You're gonna get deal with that. And if Bridget does it right, cool.
I don't know that the current social media policy is set up to handle it.
Or to address it, because if once you open that door,
you can't close it.
You cannot close it. You cannot close it. I do want to say though that I do want to give kudos where kudos is due. So we haven't gotten the published statement that was supposed to be published about from the beginning of the BOD meeting. We did, however, get a apology regarding a certain executive assistant's vague book. And to their.
And they left the comments on.
Yeah, they left the comments on, and they didn't like. They just let the comments happen. I will give that kudos personally from a totally professional marketing standpoint. Maybe they should have turned comments off. But
I've only had one issue that I have seen. I've been going in to monitor it occasionally. There's only one person where they felt that was trolling and had to go investigate that. But yeah, like I'd honestly actually good on them, because we have said we don't feel like we can talk to you in any sort of meaningful way. You always gatekeep how we can speak to you, and now they've actually let the comments happen.
Yeah. So, and they haven't, and other than a couple of comments here and there, one of the comments they made was the Zoom webinar only allows 500 people to attend the webinar. And according to, now I don't know how many people were in that webinar, but I do know that as a result of that, knowing that information, I myself am making the commitment as the virtual herald to register for every BOD meeting and then broadcast it on my Discord server, which will be which I launched like this morning. So I'll be posting that information once I have it figured out.
That way, if things do get capped, there are still ways you can access the information.
And Joe, I can add to that. We can also broadcast it out here on Kal-bardr's Corner and your virtual herald page on Facebook as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I believe the technical term is picking up the feed. Right?
Can't stop the signal.
Because we can do that. We have the technology.
So yeah. Okay, moving on.
All right,
hold on. I'm gonna vote we skip the DEI section for a second. Let's handle the other little ones, because the DEI one's gonna be explosive.
Oh yeah, that one's gonna be that one.
Let's handle the other little ones first. So Society Seneschal report.
No, the Social Society Seneschal report. She did not request any action or interpretation, which, considering the last time she did that,
we're good.
So Ducky's a little bit more. She can speak better than I can, because I'll just start, cussing. So Ducky, please express our frustration.
This is hard. So I'm actually extremely glad that she didn't have any new interpretations or policies, because, and I'm not trying to knock another volunteer, I know exactly how hard it is to be a seneschal. I did it for almost 5 years. But if you're struggling and you don't have the background to interpret these kind of policies and these kinds of big deals, then don't do it. Then just don't do it. Don't volunteer for this kind of job. Let it pass by and let somebody else who's more qualified do it. That is my big frustration, and I know it sounds like I'm gatekeeping, but it was hard enough for me with a legal background to do the legal expertise type of job.
Right.
I can only imagine how much harder it is for somebody who doesn't have that background to try to do the job.
Yep. It's
got to be intimidating as hell, and we don't need. It's half gatekeeping, but also half like. I don't think that this sort of volunteer job is serving anybody anymore. It shouldn't be just a volunteer.
Yeah.
This is a very big job. This is a vice president of operations.
Yeah, the vice president of Society Seneschal, that is a corporate job that needs corporate expertise. Yeah. And I can already hear people, but in 1994, we hired this guy named Tony. Yeah, 1994. How long
That's 20 years ago. We can try again.
We can do it again, and we can do it better and more transparently. Because you know where I was in 1994? I was a freshman in high school. Okay?
I was 6.
I was 6, yeah.
I'm surrounded.
No, exactly, John. We do. At the corporate level, we need more capability from our volunteers than we do at the local branch level. And you're right. You're absolutely right.
9 motherfucking years ago. I'm just saying, which brings us to our next point. The one of the few employees that we actually have, Louise Ducray, who took over for the venerable Renee Signorati, who retired. She was good people in my experience, but when Renee retired, according to the link that she was making $90K a year. Louise has been hired on as part-time, only making $32 a year. And I'm sorry, she is not doing part-time work, because she went through, not only did she do her report as the vice president of corporate operations, she went through and did all of the other reports for all of the publication people that weren't there either. And the woman had to deal with an implementation of a membership portal that went sideways. And you're telling me that she only worked 20 hours a week? Why are we paying her that paltry amount when we were paying our previous vice president of corporate operations twice as much? Maybe it's because we decided to give a 100% raise to our society president.
It's possible.
Maybe. The Form 990/2022, and by the way, Kal-bardr's posting all of these links in here, shows Bear Killer and Leslie are the only paid employees of this of the SCA.
Yep.
Which is weird, because where's Louise and all that? But
I was to say that's like, and that may be a employee versus board thing. I don't know if there's a
difference. In any case, this is this is. There's questions here.
Yeah, there's big questions here about why the person who's working the hardest. Sorry, my dogs are not cooperating. The people who are working the hardest, and I can tell you from being a seneschal, Louise is working her butt off.
Yeah.
When our event went sideways for anniversary, like about a couple weeks ago, and I needed emergency insurance, that was myself and my kingdom seneschal were literally calling her late at night and early then. Like starting 6 o'clock the next morning, she was answering, she was on it, and she deserves the $90K that Renee was making if we're going to pay somebody.
Right. Yeah. And whereas we have our by the way, we're not even talk about the whole SCA nepotism angle.
Right. All right.
What's going on?
Society Treasurer report.
Okay, so the society treasurer was out of town, so she wasn't there for very long. She wasn't there to present her report. The reason I wanted to point out the society treasurer report is, it's 20, and I can speak to this because I'm the baronial exchequer for Starcoffin. It is 2023. Why can't I use Venmo for people to? Because I had people going, well, can you take Venmo for our anniversary event? And I'm like, I can't. Why are we still stuck in 1987 where I have to write a check?
They're still working on setting up Neon for payment, and that's just for NMR reporting and tracking. That's not for people paying to get into sites, and that's just that extra $5 to cover the insurance.
The other issue that we're having is, a lot of services and things that local groups need to purchase, for example, like a Zoom subscription or web server fees, those all have to be paid by card. They don't accept,
or even just renting sites. Honestly,
even renting sites here in Vegas, City of Henderson Parks and Recs, they're not going to take a check. They want us to use their portal and pay with a freaking card. Why can't we use the technology that's in that countless other organizations use?
Right. And honestly, it's an equity issue at the end of the day too, because not every person in that barony or in that shire or in that local group is going to have a debit card or credit card or enough money to front that cost if you have to pay it by card and then wait to get reimbursed. Right. Eventually, it just becomes an equity issue.
Mm-hmm. And then the president did speak briefly about the whole new tax in Canada and how they're working on getting that right.
Taken care of.
Asha. By the way, shout out to my girl Ash. Anyway,
John too. That's another excellent point. Why haven't we examined different membership payment schemes? We haven't looked at that either.
Yeah, they want us to pay. And the fact that they sneakily, when they first opened up that new member portal and people were starting to pay, they were automatically turning on auto pay and not making it clear that they're giving the folks an option to turn that auto pay off.
Yeah, I know that.
That got caught on pretty damn quick, and they flipped that switch off. Speaking as someone who's done billing and payroll, that was some shady shit. I'm just saying. But as far as the Canada tax issue, it was quoted as a new tax. It's a little bit more than that, and I can't really say much more than that without, possibly getting in trouble with a certain board of directors. But for those of you who have that ability, look it up. That's all I'm going to say.
I'll reach out to some of my north of the border friends and ask them a question about that one. So, let's see. So why have we not done a deep dive on corporate finances? I mean, it's all there allegedly.
We literally sued in the 90s to be able to get the financial information.
And this is what we've got. This is what we've got to work with at this point.
Yep.
Oh, Shane says it's still turned on. The auto renew is still turned on.
All right. So hey, check your thing. Make sure it's
make sure that
unless you mean to. Yeah.
So yeah. Moving on. So next thing I want to talk about is the Herald's report, which was really it was pretty awesome. The one thing I want to point out is how SCA, the SCA, which is the standard.
Society.
As a herald, I should know what it means, but I don't even know what it means.
Yeah,
I forgot the E.
I don't know what it means, but I don't know what it stands for. But it's basically the rules of heraldry. What you can and can't do. Oddly,
it's the standards for evaluation of names in armory.
The SCA is so much easier to change the corpora and so much more inclusive.
It's true.
Yeah. So every month when they send out a new report. When the new LOAR goes out.
Standards of evaluation of names and armory. Thank you, John.
Yeah, I forget the E every time. I was like, I know it's something about names and armory. So every month when the new LOAR comes out, the current Society Herald can make changes to SCA. That's what they do. They make new rulings every month.
Yeah.
It just seems easier to fix
from the bottom up right now. So
yeah. Why can't the board be more like the Heralds then? I think if the framework's already there.
I don't know what your beef is, but I agree with you. Don't get me started on the College Herald right now, because good God, this whole thing.
Okay.
But I will give them. They are the Heralds at society level. It's a little. There's some stuff that's problems with it, but it is moving forward much quicker than the rest of the.
And more inclusively.
Yeah. And more. Yeah. The fact that they're allowing oral tradition to be considered in naming practices. The fact
somebody's already explored that, like they're actually Reith is being very accommodating and talking about that stuff. I've been talking to a couple of different heralds about it, because as a herald who is Indigenous, I would like to not have to have a Western European persona at some point. That'd be great. That'd be great to just use my own name, which is the only name I have permission to use. But
yeah, that's
how awesome would that be? And
that's a whole other. But the fact that we're having those discussions and that change is actually being done in a fast and way, yes, it's herald. For those of you saying, yeah, but that's heraldry. We're talking about other stuff. I'm sorry, but if in the business world, you can't just. You have to go. You got to.
You have to go on a reasonable timeline.
You have to move fast. This isn't 1984 anymore. The quickness that the heralds make their changes and updates to their policy, it should be just as quick at the board level. That's all I'm going to say about it.
If we're giving the volunteers at the board level the infrastructure they need to make these decisions, like the additional stipends or whatever it is that they need to devote more time to this.
Mm-hmm.
The top down, the abuse of the volunteers really is top down, and I cannot stress that enough. These people are just as overworked as any of us are, and it shouldn't be that hard for any of us.
Yep. All right, Society Marshal.
He wasn't at the meeting.
He stepped down, right?
He is stepping down, but he's stepping down at his regular.
To be fair, yes. Although I gotta say though, even if it is in fact his traditional stepping down, what a way to step down.
Yeah.
Let's just say, it's that waiting to exhale gif where Angela Bassett just, lights the car on fire. That's kind of what I'm envisioning this particular.
He'll still likely be involved though as Bear Killer's squire and former squire and part of Bear
my
Killer's
understanding is, and you may be able to confirm this or not because that's from your part of it, isn't Count Ray and Duke Kern, who was a Trimaris Marshal, aren't they part of Bear Killer's lineage?
Okay, yes, but so is half the known world. If you know anything about Baron Killer, he hands out red belts like they're going out of style.
Oh, he does it Yari style. All right.
Yeah, so it's just like,
Yari's got 91 out here.
Yeah,
so.
there was they're numbered somewhere. It's how are you? Oh, you're Bear Killer Squire, so is I. So yeah, just saying you're Bear Killer Squire doesn't mean a whole lot around here.
Well, it does. It might be. It might not be, but it's still. It's just something to consider in light of all of the bullshit that's going on. Sometimes.
When did he take a 90 seconds, Shane? The last one I knew was 91, and that was Casey.
There's news. Okay, so I want to add something to the Society Marshal thing. I had a viewer message me about this. Apparently, there's also been an issue with the Society Marshal stepping down because they don't have a active live weapons deputy. And it's been over a year unfilled, and the BOD won't fill it because the marshal's stepping down and all the deputies go with the marshal. So they'll need a new one in a few months anyways. So that's apparently an issue currently is there's no live weapons deputy at the top level.
Hasn't been for a year.
Yeah. So the live weapons community is further getting shit on by that. Now, we're still handling it at local levels, but doesn't help, especially with the issues we had with the Wistrick issue.
Yes,
there's nobody at the top of that.
I'm calling it the Wistrick situation.
The Wistrick situation.
Yeah, I'm Pulp Fiction. That is a straight up Pulp Fiction reference. It's the Wistrick situation, kind of like the Bonnie situation, except maybe a little bit less blood on a car.
All right, so I think that's no important there. We're good to go.
Anyway,
all right.
Yeah.
Standing committees. We'll go back to standing committees later. All right. So let's hit the DEI issue, and then I think we're gonna have to cut it because we're running short on time. All right. Okay. So DEI issues.
The
first
fought
part
for
of this,
an hour.
Huh?
They fought for an hour over adding one letter.
Yeah. All right. So there's two big points here. They're adding the B. So let's start with that because I think I had asked what that was because I was like, I don't know what that is. So DEI B is the new heading. Talk about that for a second.
B is belonging. And to Charles's credit, he's only released a couple of articles on why it's important in the workspace. But as somebody who works in doing DEI work, on the local level, but also in my real life, because you can't be a brown person without doing a little bit of it. And educating myself at school, going to the university and taking classes about this stuff, the belonging aspect is actually very important. I'm just not sure where he's going with it. I'm not sure if it's relating it to the volunteers and the workforce issue that we have with regards to retention of officers and also retention of people. And I don't know what he's planning with it. And I guess we got to give him more time.
Yeah.
But I do see where it's in line with the goals of the office, but I'm also not sure why it took that much effort in the meeting just to get that one letter and for him to get anything done, frankly. It wasn't even just that one letter, but they fought also for a long time over the word mandatory because he wanted to make all of the DEIB officers mandatory at the kingdom level. And they, again, just quibbled and actually fell out of Sturgis to have the side discussion about whether or not it was even feasible to be mandatory. And that's a side conversation they should have talked about previously.
Okay, quick question. What are the differences between inclusion and belonging? So DEI being diversity, equity, inclusion versus belonging.
So inclusion is like the infrastructure that allows you to go out and commit actions that make people feel like they're belonging. If that makes sense.
Okay.
So the way that they one leads to the other. So if you consciously make the decision to be inclusive and say, I would like to invite these types of people, like the example that they used in one of the articles was like, if you're going out to a party, inclusion is being invited, diversity is inviting all kinds of people, equity is inviting or making sure everybody has an equal access to the party. Inclusion is making multiple activities or being invited to dance or like being included, literally being included, and then belonging would be like knowing all the songs at that dance party.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right.
So it's we're being inclusive by inviting everybody to the SCA. The belonging side would be allowing people to celebrate their cultures in this case.
Celebrate, bring
celebrate who they are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly, Runa. You can sit with us versus
we want you to sit with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can say you can, but that doesn't make you feel like you belong there and you should be there. Saying we want you to be there, we are including you purposely, you belong here, and affirming that is an important thing. It will do a lot towards retention, especially on the workplace side of it. I'm just not sure, one, why it took so long in that meeting, and two, where he's going with it.
Yeah, that was just, and once it was explained to me after the board meeting, I was like, okay, fine. Whatever.
And to be fair, he is going to probably explain it on his May 2nd
on his
episode
podcast,
of Voices of Color.
That's happening.
Yeah. Links are out there. Scadian Voices of Color episode on May 2nd. He'll be interviewed by Baroness Zara and Baroness Giada. So,
and he only has been in the job about 8 weeks, so he's still really, really new to this.
Yeah.
And he's making a lot of good first attempts, and he's really trying. But again, a lot like Bridget, he's not being given a lot to work with.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think it's important to show support for Charles, because he came into this, the shit show that surrounded his taking this office. Yep. You're having an episode on that this Sunday. So anyway,
he walked into the house on fire, and we'll talk about.
Yeah, he walked into it. I do want to say though, for the Voices of Color episode, I will be listening and providing commentary on my Discord server. I will have a viewing party for that in my Discord server, and that is interested in kind of doing that commentary to join me. I really am interested in what he has to say.
Yes, yeah, Shane. He did jump into the pool feet first, but the pool can be acid.
The pool is acid.
He did get some other things done. Like they quibbled for an hour about the mandatory section, but he did also get a lot of other things done. Like he is implementing the suite of recommendations that Zara recommended. Like he's following up on her work and making sure that her contributions are not being discredited or thrown away. And he is actually actively trying to work with kingdoms to develop processes and codified practices for this office, so it's not just this vague nebulous thing and people don't think we're the woke police or any other number of things that have been thrown around about the office. It just seems like he's up against a tough, very privileged community of people, and that was very evident as they all patted themselves on the back for adding one letter.
Yeah, that was the other thing. They were like, this is just the bee's knees. Oh, I'm so happy to do this. And I'm sitting here like, you added a letter, but you stopped him you took the teeth out of his other proposal. What are you doing? Huh? So yeah, it came from a place of privilege. And keep in mind, this is myself I'm speaking as a woman of color and someone who has had to deal with this in the modern world. It just kind of like, it was off-putting to me. And I'm just saying that as myself. It may have been well meant and sincere, but come on, when you're already fucking things up, this is what you're going to give yourself a pat on the back for?
Mm-hmm. I agree, Shane. It did feel like that, and because they have not historically felt it did feel like a circle jerk, because like they have not historically.
I'm clicking it. There we go.
Yeah, they have not historically been inclusive, and then to just pat themselves on the back for doing one little thing. It was
basically like an executive circle jerk. That's basically what it was. And I'm just sitting here like, when you're at that point where the trust of your constituency is that low, is that really the best public thing that you can do?
Yeah. And I'll be really curious to see what Charles's commentary on it is. This may have been one of his, like, it's a little victory he can take because at least he gets something accomplished, right? I'll give him that. Mm-hmm. He's at least hitting something. So, all right. Anything else on the DEI report we need to cover think we've got all the points from that in there.
I think we got the final thing, and I know, like I said, we're already at the over. I did want to talk about the executive session.
Yep. All right. So sliding down.
This is the final part before the Q&A part of the show, where they discussed the revocation and denial of membership. They just went through a list of names. All of them were approved except for one. That was just the modern name and whether or not they were being R&D. No information was provided as to where these folks were located,
right.
What rule was broken. And again, a lot of people are like, well, that's just being nosy. No, I'm not asking for the actual tea here. We're asking what rule, what is it that they broke, and why are they being told?
If you're going to cite community standards and have codes of conduct, there's no reason that we can't know they broke Rule 2, subsection A, that says don't touch other people. You don't need any more information than that, but if these people aren't allowed in our game anymore, we can't protect them. We can't protect ourselves from them coming back if they go to other areas if we, number one, don't know who they are and don't know what they did.
Right. So that was really infuriating because it took them less than 5 minutes. In fact, Gita, our note taker, she couldn't even get all the names because it was just boom, 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 boom. And no context, no reason given, just, modern name. Yes, we're denying them, motion pass, blah, blah, blah. And that just seems so wrong to me. Like, if these people are being told that they're no longer welcome, where's the mechanism to ensure that they're no longer welcome?
Yeah, because
So I think this is the great sort of the point here. The reason, and let me preface, the reason the SCA says they don't do that, they don't say more about that, is because they can't. Right? That's the reason. They've been sued for things, and they're all scared to talk about people because defamation. Here's a great point. Other organizations do it. Yes, I think we do. You do it carefully and correctly. It's doable.
Yeah, it's doable.
So if we do it carefully and correctly, we should make it doable because that will empower our people to be safer across the board. Because if there's a guy here that we had to R&D because he attempted to murder somebody, but if he tried to go anywhere else, they wouldn't know who he is or what he did.
Right.
Yeah, they would just see the name, and there's no way for us to cross-check, like especially at major events. I know for a fact, as a former deputy main for the war that was Estrella, we were not given any information on folks that were R&D.
You can request that information if you think
and maybe it was given to add the actual mains or something like that. Yeah, we're talking about members of a group. So that J. Robin, can you highlight that, strobe that?
Yeah.
That would be a question for a lawyer. Speaking of lawyers,
they talked about the in-house counsel report from Viscount Brock, but they didn't tell what it was.
On what that they said it was, what was it?
Accepted.
Classified. No, it was accepted, but they specifically used the word it was classified or
it's restricted to BOD only.
Yeah, for the BOD only. That all they did was there was no information on what the report contained, and I get it. Some of those things may not necessarily be, maybe confidential, but at the same time, again, we're talking about an organization that board of directors, a corporate structure that is already under fire. Yeah. People are losing trust, losing trust or have lost trust in this institution.
Yeah, and in this case, I
also think this speaks to how we abuse volunteers, though, because Brock isn't a volunteer in-house counsel, right?
Which is a whole problem. He is biased.
Oh, no, he's a royalist. He's admitted fully to being a royalist. He and I have had our own issues when he called me out for picking up that gauntlet.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah, there's some tea on that. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
But he's admittedly very much a royalist. He will side and be very biased in favor of the royalist attitudes. And so he's already very biased in House of Counsel. But also, this is not his area of law. He's primarily a criminal attorney. And currently, as far as I know, and as far as like his website and stuff advertises, he's literally somebody who goes in and fills in when you don't have an attorney to, like, an attorney's sick or an attorney needs a day off or whatever, a warm body. Right. How is that effective in-house legal counsel?
Yeah. I mean, having somebody that at least knows how to find law is better than nothing.
I can find law.
Right.
I'm a first-year college student. Does that mean I should be SCA in-house legal counsel?
I said better than nothing.
Yeah,
but
so
you're right.
If for a multinational corporation that's got all this money in the bank,
a 50-year-old multinational multi-million-dollar corporation
for a lawyer that specializes in not-for-profit law. I'm just saying, if they can pay 43 G's for an SCA president, they can come correct with a retainer for a lawyer to ask questions for. So.
Yeah, exactly, John. When seneschals are being asked to provide legal opinions when that's not their legal area of expertise, or even their normal job, something is wrong.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, so that's pretty much. At that point, the question and answer session began. Some of the questions that were asked were answered. I have screenshots of that entire Q&A session from Zoom.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do a follow-up show with the Q&A. Let's go ahead and do a follow-up show on the Q&A. I think we'll go ahead and schedule that because I want to go ahead and cut this tonight so we don't overburden our crowd. I am going to post this link out real quick one time. So let's talk about the petition that's out there real quick.
Right. So Iselda de Narbonne, I'm totally butchering your name, sorry, and her husband, who I know, I don't know his SCA name, I just know him as David Biggs, because that's, they're the ones that kind of, Iselda kind of started this whole process with their email asking for
the
FOIA request that was the subject of a previous show. Her husband, who is a federal attorney, works with in the diplomatic
State Department.
Yeah, with the State Department. Arian Harper. Okay, yeah, that's his SCA name. I just know him as David Biggs because that's what his Facebook wrote. So I'm just kind of
the two of them have written a petition that is and he's also done a white paper on the legal liability of the SCA and spelled it out very, very clearly because this man knows how to interpret policy. This is his job. If he doesn't do his job correctly, we have international war. So I'm pretty sure, since everything's still fine in the world, fine-ish. We don't have full-on international war.
That, Lily. So
well, that's true, but we don't have World War III, so he's at least mostly effectively doing his job. He has written this white paper and spelled out very clearly the legal liability, and there's a petition going around to restructure the BOD.
And we are wholeheartedly behind that.
We'll carry copies of the petition everywhere. We've already signed it.
We're going to be carrying copies of the petition in our little corner of Kaid. We encourage anyone who has any vested interest in keeping this organization going
and accountable
to even if you and Iselda made a good point because someone asked on my virtual Herald post, well, what is it that this petition is specifically asking for?
There's an FAQ in there. There's a
Q&A in there, but the specifically this board, we want the board to hire an outside consultant versed in nonprofit and the running thereof, publish what their recommendations are, and actually, take them in hand. And if they're not going to, have a very good reason why. She specifically noted that the reason that we're not being specific as to what that looks like is because we need someone who has real world experience in this to provide us guidance. We don't want to shoehorn the board into doing anything. We want them to be held accountable and to do things the correct way that will not keep us, because right now,
and we can already see, honestly, how having people who are effective at some of these job positions, who have real world experience in these sorts of policy areas, how Bridget, who has real world communications experience, is doing the best she can, and could be doing better if she was given more resources, and how Charles, who again has real DEI experience, could be doing better with the correct resources. If you hire the right people and compensate them if we can, but if you hire the right people for the right job and not just go with who is a duke or a duchess or bear killer's buddy, we might have a better run institution.
Right.
Just saying. And the final point I want to make is because our East Coast people probably want to go to bed or get drunk, whatevs. The biggest thing that I want to stress is that this is not a personal attack.
Right.
A lot of apologists are ranting and raving about how we're attacking their friends and they're basically personalizing our criticism of the board of directors. I don't know these people personally. I don't have anything against them. I'm pretty sure that they are wonderful people.
Yeah.
Calling somebody's job performance into question is not
in the context of an SCA event. We'd probably have a lot to talk about and a lot to discuss.
But somebody's job performance into question is not degrading their moral value or calling them a bad person.
Correct.
We are literally paid members. They have a fiduciary responsibility to us, so we have a vested interest in how their job performance is and how it should look like. We are the target audience, right? This is our society. And our community, right? And you have to have community buy-in to make anything go forward. And so if you tarnish everything to the point where you can't get the community buy-in, the thing will just die.
So that's kind of our final statement. None of this, everything that we've talked about, obviously, is our opinion and not the opinion of the SCA or any of its subsidiaries, blah, 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 blah. But I hope that there are people out there listening who are members, and I hope that they hear us when we say, this is not about you personally. And it can't be, because I don't know any of you personally. I just know what you are putting out there as the Society Board of Directors, and criticizing that and finding issue with what is going on in that sense. So, and I think that people need to realize that the in-game rank, at the end of the day, we should not be using the in-game rank and status
as a deciding factor
someone's worth or worthiness of being able to contribute to this community at any level.
Correct.
All right. So, I think we've covered a lot of the data for the board of directors meeting. We will discuss the Q&A in a different episode, and there's also a couple of notes at the end that we may end up covering.
Oh, and of course, that's just Sunday. This week has been kind of nuts.
Yeah, and
there's what's happened this week.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of shenanigans this week that we need to cover. So look for more episodes of that coming up. There, hopefully by then, we'll have an actual published version of this, in a published version of the report or the initial statement. Mm-hmm. Keep watching for that on the SCA pages.
Yeah, and please, plugging my page, like and share what I do on the Virtual Herald Facebook page. There was a post of our Discord server. Please pardon the dust. I literally created that sucker this morning, so there's only one channel. So
it has been blowing up my phone all day. People are joining.
It's under construction.
Like 3 people have joined it since I've been sitting here.
But that's going to be, and then also we're going to be creating. I'm going to be working on a podcast under the KK Productions umbrella. That's going to be the next thing that I'm going to be doing. And then we'll probably be doing this again. What, next Friday? Do you want to do this again next Friday?
We'll talk.
He's like, man, I got stuff to do.
He's got schedules.
I got schedules, man. I got shows happening. All right. So, anyways, speaking of schedules, coming up this Sunday here on Kal-bardr's Corner, I'll be joined by Baroness Zara, talking about DEI and sort of next steps in how we should support the DEI efforts. I'm sorry, DEIB efforts going forward. I need to go in and change my graphic now. So check that out. Also, support us on Patreon, patreon.com/KK Productions. Join the grand wall of patrons, or look us up on Redbubble while Redbubble still exists. Searching for KK Productions. At least while KK Productions still exists on Redbubble.
Yeah.
Apparently
and then Je suis Scallion. I am not a member of the Scallion. I wish I was, because
I am
oh
the
my
Scallion.
god,
What are you talking about?
Oh
I am just the wild onion, the indigenous cousin of the Scallion.
They're the wild onion. That made me. I left sword. All right. Joe, Ducky, you're amazing people. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for your efforts in documenting this, and thank you to Gita for doing the actual note taking.
Yeah, Dame Gita for the note taking
Gita.
because we were too busy reacting. She's an amazing note taker.
Sometimes you got to be angry, and I get it. But until next time, folks, we appreciate all of you tuning in. Like, follow, comment, subscribe, click on the buttons. Watch here for more. We'll do what we can to keep reporting the news.
Yeah.
But until next time, this has been Ducky, Joe, and Kal-bardr's Corner. Have a good night, everybody.